Snow whispered across the empty prairie as the dying sun spilled gold over the frozen fields, and the woman holding her, newborn, shivered beneath the weight of a world collapsing around her. Her name was Ilara, a widow barely 26, her life upturned. In less than a week, when raiders swept through the settlement she called home, burning everything she owned, taking everything except the child in her arms, she wandered the winter road with nothing but a torn shawl, sore feet, and the desperate hope that someone, anyone, might stop, listen, and help her survive the merciless night. Her breath trembled in the cold air as she spotted a lone figure on horseback, approaching slowly through the falling snow. A broad-shouldered cowboy with a weather-beaten coat, dark hat pulled low, and a gaze that cut through the frost like steel. His horse snorted clouds of warm breath while his hand tightened on the reins in careful suspicion as he halted before her. She raised one shaking hand and whispered words that barely left her throat. "Please, sir, I don't mean harm." The cowboy's eyes softened as he noticed the child cradled against her chest. "Where are you headed, ma'am?" he asked in a low, graveled voice. It was the question she feared most. Her lips cracked as she spoke. We have nowhere left." The truth hung between them like a wound that refused to heal. The cowboy, whose name was Jackson Wilder, a millionaire ranch owner known across 3 counties, not only heard her words but felt them. Despite his quiet reputation, he was once a man who roamed the land alone, building an empire through grit, sweat, and the kind of determination only those who have loved and lost understand. He knew the look in her eyes, the look of someone holding on by a thread. Snowflakes landed on Ilara's tangled hair, melting into droplets that ran down her cheeks like tears as she tried to stay strong. The baby whimpered, and Jackson's jaw tightened with an emotion he hadn't expected. "Ma'am," he began, but the words broke inside him. He cleared his throat and asked softly, "How long have you been on this road?" Ilara swallowed hard. 2 days, she whispered. "I tried reaching the next town, but I don't have money, no food. No one would stop." Her legs trembled and she swayed slightly. Jackson immediately dismounted, boots sinking into the mud as he steadied her shoulder with one gentle hand. "You shouldn't be out here in this weather," he said, a mix of concern and anger toward the world that would abandon a mother and child. "Come sit. Just rest a moment." Ilara wanted to refuse. Pride wasn't a luxury she could afford, but she hesitated. Trusting strangers had already cost her everything once. She stepped back slightly, clutching the baby tighter. "I don't know who you are," she whispered, her voice breaking. Jackson nodded with understanding. He removed his gloves, showing empty hands. "Jackson Wilder," he said calmly. "I own the Wilder Range about an hour west. Folks around these parts call me a cowboy, but truth is, I just try to help where I can." His attempt at a soft smile didn't hide the seriousness in his eyes. "I won't hurt you or the little one. You have my word." Something about the sincerity in his tone touched her, as if the frozen world around her suddenly cracked open with a sliver of warmth. She breathed out shakily and let him lead her closer to the horse, letting her weight rest a little as exhaustion took over. Jackson wrapped his heavy coat around her shoulders, leaving himself in the cold wind without a second thought. The scent of leather and pine enveloped her as she whispered, Why are you being so kind?" He looked at her long and hard before answering. "Because good people are dying out here," he said, "and I won't let 2 more fade away." The child stirred again, letting out a soft cry. Without hesitation, Jackson reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a wool blanket. "Here," he said, tucking it gently around the infant. "What's his name?" Ilara's lips trembled. "Liam," she said. "He's all I have left." Jackson looked at the child with a softness Ilara didn't expect from a man so rugged. "Then let's make sure Liam grows up to have more than just survival." But even as Jackson prepared to lift her onto the horse, Ilara flinched again, doubt warring with desperation. She stepped backward, shaking her head violently. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't go with you. What if this is a mistake?" Jackson didn't force her. Instead, he knelt in front of her in the snow, eye level, showing vulnerability no wealthy cowboy was ever expected to show. "Mom," he said quietly, "life has been cruel to you. I see that. But sometimes the only way to survive is to trust. Someone just wants more." His breath clouded in the cold, but his voice remained warm, steady, grounding. "You said you have nowhere left. Then let me be somewhere for you, even if it's just for tonight, even if it's just until you can stand on your own." Ilara's eyes filled with tears she had tried so hard to hide. The weight of grief, fear and exhaustion finally pushed her to speak the words that had been crushing her chest. "We truly have nowhere left." Her voice cracked like shattered glass. Jackson stood, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, and whispered the words that would change everything. "Then you have me." For a moment, the world stood still, the snow, the wind, the fading horizon, all frozen around that single promise. Ilara stared at him, searching for a lie, a catch, a shadow of deception, but she found none. Instead, she saw a man haunted by his own past hurts, offering a second chance not just to her, but perhaps to himself as well. Jackson helped her onto the horse, steadying her carefully as she held Liam close. The warmth of the animal seeped into her frozen legs, and she felt life returning slowly to her body. Jackson mounted behind her, wrapping an arm protectively around her waist to keep her steady. "We'll reach my ranch before the storm hits," he murmured. "You'll be safe there. Both of you." As the horse began to walk, Ilara dared to look back at the road she had come from. Now nothing but footprints fading in the snow. A road of loss, a road of endings. But ahead was something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Faint, fragile, trembling, but alive. Ilara leaned back slightly, trusting the cowboy who had offered her a promise when the world had offered nothing. The wind grew harsher, but Jackson's arm stayed firm. The storm clouds gathered, but the warmth at her back kept fear at bay. And as they rode toward the horizon, painted with dying light, Ilara whispered to her baby, maybe we're meant to start again." She didn't know what awaited her at the Wilder Range, or why fate had pushed this stranger into her path. But something deep inside her stirred, a quiet voice telling her that the world had not finished with her story yet. And little did she know, Jackson Wilder had been waiting for a reason to heal, just as she had been waiting for a reason to survive. The storm had passed overnight, leaving the Wilder Range wrapped in a quiet blanket of white as Ilara slowly awoke to the soft glow of morning light. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. All she felt was warmth, the crackle of a nearby fire, and the gentle breathing of her baby, Liam, nestled in a small basket beside the bed. Then the memories returned. Jackson's steady hand, his warm coat around her shoulders, the snow-covered road, and the words that still echoed inside her. "Then you have me." She sat up slowly, still sore but no longer trembling with fear. This cabin, though small and simple, felt safer than any place she had been in months. When she looked out the frosted window, she saw Jackson outside, splitting firewood in the crisp morning air, each strike measured and strong, his breath rising like smoke in the cold. There was something reassuring about the way he worked. Not rushed, not angry, not burdened, just focused. Steady, dependable. He noticed her watching and gave her a small nod before returning to his task, as if letting her decide, in her own time, whether she wanted to step out into this new world. Later, when he entered the cabin and saw her awake, his voice softened. "Morning. Hope you slept better." He set a bowl of warm broth before her, gently checking the blankets around. "Liam." Ilara felt tears gather, unexpectedly at the corners of her eyes. Kindness had become such a rarity that it felt almost unreal. Over the next day, she rested while Jackson handled the ranch chores, moving between the barn, the horses, the fence line, and the cabin with a quiet rhythm. Whenever he walked back inside, he asked the same simple question, "You need anything?" And every time he asked it, she felt the weight of her loneliness lift just a little more. When evening arrived, she stepped outside for the first time, drawn by the quiet beauty of the land. The sky was purple and gold as the sun dipped behind distant hills, and the cold air felt softer than usual, touched with the scent of pine. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her, staring at the horizon with a mix of grief and fragile hope. That was when Jackson walked up beside her, not saying anything at first, just offering his presence like a shelter. "You all right?" he asked gently. She nodded weakly, though her eyes said otherwise. "I'm trying," she whispered, "but every time I think of what I lost." Her voice cracked and she looked down, clutching the edge of her dress. Jackson leaned against the barn wall, watching the snow fall around them. "Loss has a way of making the world feel smaller," he said quietly, "but it can also make room for things you never saw coming." Ilara turned to him, surprised by the depth in his voice. "How did you move on?" she asked. Jackson hesitated, the cold wind brushing his hair as he looked toward the horizon. "I didn't," he admitted. "Not at first. I tried to bury myself in work, tried pretending I didn't need anyone. But in the end, I learned something important." He looked at her then, his eyes steady. "You can survive alone, but you can't heal alone." The words touched something deep inside her, something scarred and tender. She felt Liam wiggle in her arms, reminding her why she kept moving forward. When Jackson reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and placed a light hand on her shoulder, she didn't flinch. Instead, she felt the warmth of reassurance spread through her. "You and your boy deserve a chance to rest," he whispered. "A chance to start over if you want it." The next morning, sunlight sparkled across the snow like scattered stars. Ilara stepped outside again, holding Liam close as the wind brushed her hair. This land felt different now, less frightening, more alive. She turned to find Jackson watching her from the porch. His hat tipped slightly forward, his expression unreadable but gentle. He walked toward her slowly, boots crunching in the snow. "Ilara," he said softly, "you said you had nowhere left, but you don't have to walk another cold mile alone. If you want, you can stay here. Not because you owe me anything, not because you need help, but because you deserve a place where you're wanted." Her breath shook as she whispered, "Are you sure?" Jackson's voice deepened with certainty. "I'm sure. If you want somewhere to begin again, then you have me." Ilara's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. She looked at Liam, then back at the man who had turned her desperation into hope. And with her heart finding new strength, she whispered the words that sealed their new beginning. "Then we choose you."